Just opened at the GAA Museum in Croke Park in Dublin is an exhibition which will run for 12 months. It's entitled From Wireless to Wi-Fi, and it covers many different aspects of the relationship between Gaelic games and broadcasting. The RTE Sound Archive, as listeners to this programme will know, reflects a very interesting relationship between the GAA and Irish broadcasting. Indeed, it was the Irish Press newspaper and the growing radio listenership for news of Gaelic games on Radio Eireann which helped to put the GAA on the map. The Irish Press sports pages from September 1931, when the paper was launched, transformed sports reporting in Irish media, and Radio Eireann gave an early place of honour to Gaelic games. BBC Northern Ireland largely ignored them, declining even to include the results in their news bulletins. This explained by their then controller, Walter Maguire, because the games were played on the Sabbath, and to announce results might offend some of his listeners. Radio Eireann had no such inhibitions.
The first sports event I remember is an eyewitness account of the Kilkenny Tipperary All-Ireland hurling final in Killarney.
Abbey actor Micheal O'Brien, a listener in 1937.
And it was Sean O'Callaghan was giving the broadcast. It was September 1937. In Conlon's in Ballintaggart in Spidale. I remember walking up the Boreen up to it with some farmers. I didn't know much about it, but they wanted to hear the result of the match at the time. And some people were standing outside at the Beanie Tea, the able end of the house. And anyway, we walked in, and it was about 7:15 or around 7 o'clock. And we went in, and I saw this box. Oh, I never thought, and I thought it was the wonder of the Western world, really. And the old people said, oh, far he's Killarney, man down in Killarney, we can hear him here, It was one of the old radio sets with the dry battery and a wet battery, you see, and a thing outside. I think there were only four sets in the parish at the time, the doctor or the master or the parish priest, but we wouldn't go to those houses, of course. I mean, this was an open house of for everybody. Well, that was my first experience of radio, and I thought it was wonderful.
Tuarenn and Radio Eireann were innovative in their approach to Gaelic games, and in the late 1930s they discovered a new, young broadcaster, Micheal O'Hare.
Micheal O'Hare, even the name suggests excitement.
Sean O'Sheacoin.
Promise of drama, guarantee of atmosphere. If Micheal was a painter, he would be of the Impressionist school. His images are not just those which he sees, but those that he wants his audience to see.
Going for it, getting to it, being tackled by Ty Kelly, getting it in a bit to Tom Cheesy. Cheesy has to run through. Carr has it 14 yards out. He takes a shot, and it's the goal.
And although the majority of the O'Hare broadcasts have been on radio, his supreme talent is that his listening audience does see the game. Maybe it's not exactly the game the attendance at the venue sees. Oh, the scores and the scorers are the same, the result is the same, but the game for the listening audience is different, because Micheal O'Hare is playing in their game. And in that game there is argy-bargy, there are shemuzzles and clashes of the ash, solo runs of 10, 20, 30 and 40 yards, and the game is not over until the final whistle blows. In the year that the GAA celebrates its centenary, it is an awesome fact that Micheal has broadcast the national games for almost half of those 100 years.
He was a schoolboy when he first auditioned to become a commentator.
I was there to do the test. There were, I think, 5 of us all together.
And only one listener to these 5 hopefuls as commentators. The one listener was the Director of Broadcasting, TJ Kiernan, back in the GPO with his headphones on.
Each was asked to do 5 minutes of the first half. At half-time, Dr. Kiernan, he got through from the GPO and asked that the man, mark you, man, who did the last 5 minutes, would he do the second half?
Despite his youth, Dr. Kiernan gave him his opportunity.
And I remember him quite well as a young, well-set-up young fellow.
O'Hare did his homework and he impressed Rory Johnson, a member of the Monaghan team, playing in the match, which was O'Hare's first live broadcast.
I think he had just left school. He must have been only around about 18 years of age. We were introduced to him. I little thought at that time that this person was destined to become the voice of the GAA and probably the best known voice on Radio Air in the next 40 or 50 years.
Going for it, getting to it, being tackled by Ty Kelly, getting it in a bit to Tom Cheesy. Cheesy has to run through. Power had it 14 yards out. He takes a shot and it's a goal.
I never met Micheal O'Hare in my life, except I say hello to him one time in Sligo at a Connacht final.
Micheal O'Brien again, as a radio listener in those years.
But the thing about him is, sometimes, you see, you go home to your landlady and you say, you might think the match was mediocre, you know. And you go home and the landlady said, that was a powerful, great game. And it wouldn't be that good it came, but he made it good for the listeners.
Jimmy Mahan, radio air and sound engineer, had covered all Gaelic games since the station opened, and he was there on O'Hare's first broadcast.
He looked to me like an overgrown schoolboy or something like that. He was very good for a young fella just out of school, as I thought, as far as I remember him then. And he was exceptionally good. And at half-time, he was going very well, and at half-time I passed him up a note. As far as I remember, it was on an old cigarette packet or something like that, to tell him that he was doing very well and keep it up.
There's one aspect of that first broadcast, and indeed of a lot of other broadcasts, that I'd like to mention. One terror that a commentator can get is the feeling that he is talking to thousands upon thousands of people. And this was something that struck me very soon after I had been told I was going to do a broadcast. And there was down in Clare, in a place called Ballycorrick, up on top of a hill, a man called Patrick Gary, who used to go all over the country to matches, but of late had become stricken with arthritis and he couldn't travel anywhere. And for the first few years of broadcasting, I used to talk in commentaries to Patrick Gary. I didn't talk to the people in Ireland or anywhere else. I spoke to Patrick Gary, trying to tell him what was happening. And that way, somehow, it seemed to develop a style that the people liked.
This style that was the essence of Micheal's commentaries was to become an important part of the listening audience's perception of Gaelic games.
Sean O'Sheacoin's verdict.
In subsequent years, the live broadcast of the match was a central part of the Irish Sunday. Thousands of people throughout the country were connected to their national games by means of radio.
Micheal O'Brien remembered O'Hare's arrival as a broadcaster.
We went up anyway, went up to Conlon's again. Crowd, it was an open house, door open, and went in and into the parlours, as they call it. It was crowded. And a young voice came on the radio, you see. We had never heard before. We didn't hear anything that was going to be a new person on, because we hadn't read the papers. It was 14th of August, and, as I said, and this young voice came on, and everybody kind of wondered, who's this fella, you see. He gave his name, but it didn't mean anything to us. Micheal O'Hare didn't mean a thing to us. I'm sure there was praise. He was only a young kid, 16 years of age, which we all know now, but we didn't know then. And the reaction and this commentary, he knew everything, little details he gave us that we never got before. We know now that he was the man, that Micheal O'Hare, he must have done his homework, you see, that he knew everything about every player and their background, and how many county champions they had, and many railway cups, and what everybody was. We were spellbound by this man this day. Anyway, it was my wish from there to see Croke Park, to see two teams playing even, And anyway, the 13th of August, 1939, I cycled in on a Sunday morning. Met my sister in Galway. She was in Clostane, yeah? And I got mass, got the train to Dublin, and my fare was 4 and 6pence. my brother met me and he brought me to Croke Park. And, of course, Kerry and Mayo were playing. Galway wasn't playing. Kerry and Mayo playing All-Ireland semi-final. I was kind of disappointed the game. But I wasn't watching the game as much as I was watching the surroundings. You see, Micheal O'Hare's box and the little Hogan stand and the long stand and the little stand at the right-hand side. This was the Cusack stand. Now, we were under the Cusack stand, you see, and the pitch was so level and so green, and the pitch was so marked out, you know, which we hadn't. I mean, you know what, lad, we have at home. And the goal post and the netting that I liked very much, and the sideline men togged out, and the flags, the goal posts, you see, and the green flag and the white flag, and it was the thrill of my life, and it's the same, you see, because that's what I mean about the O'Hare. Like, I mean, it was every young fella's dream, and old people, to see Croke Park.
And that feature was to mark the exhibition just opened at the GAA Museum in Croke Park in Dublin and running for a full year, for 12 months, and it's entitled From Wireless to Wi-Fi. It covers many different aspects of the relationship between Gaelic games and broadcasting, and we'll have more from the archives on this theme in the coming programmes. As we mentioned last week, the GAA has launched a new exhibition on the GAA and broadcasting. It runs in the GAA Museum at Croke Park for a year until next June. And as listeners to this programme will know, there is a rich seam of material in the RTE Sound Archive chronicling the relationship between the GAA and RTE. It began on radio, of course, and it flourished on radio, and never more than in the golden era of Micheal O'Hare as a radio commentator on Gaelic games.
Well, my earliest memories of Micheal O'Hare is going back to about 1950, we say, when I was a young man, and we were fortunate enough to have a radio in the house, and on the Saturday before the big game, I'd have to take the wet battery and the dry battery and take it to the local creamery, which was a mile away, and to get those two batteries charged in order that everything was ready for the match on the Sunday.
This is from a documentary by Colm Keane, and he cross-cuts the voices. He does not name them individually as they come in with their points. He lists them once.
And there are comments too from Kerry footballers Wishy Fogarty and Johnny Cullity, and also Mick O'Neill, William Kennefick, Dan Griffin, John Kennedy and Donny Sheehan.
These are the voices which are cross-cut, all remembering Micheal O'Hare.
It would be a big match, and of course the commentator would be the great Micheal O'Hare. Now, half an hour before the match started, the crowd would gather, and they'd be everywhere. They'd be around the house, they'd be up the stairs, and if the weather was fine, the window was open, and the radio was put out in the window, volume full blast, and you'd hear that match all around the locality.
I'd go to the local bar here, Dempsey's, and when the big games would be broadcast, and we'd go into the back room. There'd be about 15 in the room. People from Cavan, like these were soldiers who settled down after the emergency. They'd be there from Cavan, Wexford, Limerick, and a good sprinkling of Waterford people. And maybe some of them teams would be involved. But we'd gather around the radio maybe 3:15 before the game would start at 1:30. And we'd be in the back room, and after they'd be going on about the game and who was going to win. And then as soon as the game started, you could hear a pin drop, and Balla year of Galera Carda, Micheal O'Hare come down. I've often thought of it, Colm, as sitting down with good company, a good pint, and listening to Micheal O'Hare. We were millionaires for a couple of hours.
Hello everybody, and welcome wherever you may be. Welcome to join us here in Croke Park, Dublin on this All-Ireland hurling final day. And as we come on the air, we look down on a glorious sun beating down beautifully on the Artane Boys Band, the Pipers Band, and the men from Wexford and the men from Cork marching round this crowded arena here as a preliminary to the game that could well be the game of the century.
First of all, he went around the grounds with you, and he told you about the different colours that both sets of counties brought to Croke Park, and he told you about the crowd and what Hill 16, if the Dubs were playing, of course, there'd be only one colour in the hill, that'd be the blue of the Dubs. Nobody else, of course, were going to Hill 16. Then he talks about the field and the way it was lined out. Then he talks about the referee and where he came from and what club he was involved in, and if he played himself, and then he talks about the players.
One of his greatest attributes was that he could name the player, the club he played with, the county championship team he played with, and the townland he came from.
Well, one of the things I remember about him, another one of the things I remember about him was when he'd be broadcasting the matches, he'd be talking about Radio Brazzaville, he'd be talking about the Congo, and he'd be talking about friends in America, and he'd be talking about friends all over Ireland. And to the young people of Ireland growing up at that particular time, of course, the world was very, very small. We had no internet, we had no television, everything was very, very small. But when you would hear Micheal here talking about the Congo, and you would hear him talking about Radio Brazzaville, we still don't know where Radio Brazzaville was, by the way, but we believed him anyway. Whatever he told us, if Micheal here told us something, no matter what it was, if he was saying, and all the people on the moon at the moment, and we're sending best wishes to them, we'd believe, because Micheal here said there was people on the moon listening to the match, and because all we were interested in was Kerry and what he was going to say about Kerry, and then he'd incorporate all these far-flung places all over the world, and then he'd be rattling off names, and he was a great man, of course, for the missionaries. He'd always say about the priests here and the priests there, which was a very nice thing, and it is always nice to remember those people, and they rely so much, the missionaries out farm, of course, in Ireland, so many people farm, but Micheal here never forgot those. But yes, when we do talk about those far-flung places, and that's the words he'd say about those far-flung places, and then next thing he'd rattle them off. Do you know what? He educated a lot of people too.
And so, with that singing of our national anthem, we greet Gaels throughout the world, eastwards in Africa through Radio Brazzaville, and westwards through New York station WNBC, and the game is on. And the first man to break away is Christy Ring. A long shot down the field is blocked down by Willie Rackard of Wexford. He breaks away, he's held, and there's a free for Wexford 50 yards from their own goal, out in the centre of the field. Wexford defending on our left, the railway goal, and Cork defending on our right, the canal goal, and Willie Rackard takes the free, a long high ball way up the field. Martin Codd is under it, he doubles on it. The ball goes out loose onto the wing to Tim Flood. Flood takes a shot, and there is the first score of the game.
The bishops would throw in the ball, and he could describe in a lovely low voice. He could drop his voice up and drop it down. He'd describe about, we say, the Bishop of Kerry, Bishop Moynihan, the late Bishop Moynihan, not the Muircehartaigh. The Kerry County Championship Cup, by the way, is called after him. Bishop Moynihan strolling out onto Croke Park, and John Dowling, the Kerry footballer, kneeling down, kissing his ring, and the opposing captain would do the same thing. But he could tell that little story more than anybody else could tell it. He could describe those little things to me, they remain to me more than anybody else. But he had to have that live picture column, I reckon myself, to be able to carry it across. Recordings to him, I'd say, they were only all just second best.
You could visualise being there. You know, like you could see where that ball was so many yards out, it was at an angle, the wind was such a point, and it was almost perfect. And of course that was the era of high fielding. Like today now, like, I mean, you have interpassing and it's faster, but that was high fielding, and it was how high a fella could go up for a ball. I mean, there was the Sheaman here from Castle Gregory, Aeroplane Shea. He was titled Aeroplane because he could jump so high for a ball. That's what was structured around, you know, like that long kicks, pointing the ball from an angle. I know here could describe that down minutely.
Out it comes to the far side of the field. Jody O'Connor in possession now on the 50-yard line, sending it upfield. Mick O'Connell has moved into the centre. There's some switches here, and it's worked, and here comes Mick O'Connell up along the left wing now, racing out for Jojo Barrett, trying to save it from going over the end line. He saves it from going over. He's tackled by Enda Colleran, and Jojo Barrett sends a high lobbing ball across the Galway goal. Switched it out by Noel Chin. Mick O'Connell's there now on the 21-yard line. He takes his shot, and he sends it over the bar for a point. Over the bar for a point for Kerry and Mick O'Connell.
In 54 then, the Meath match, I remember that distinctly. Kerry were beaten that day by Meath, and I remember he talking about Paddy McDermott, the man with the cap. And I remember 1955 then for the Cavan semi-final, Gunnar Brady, the way he talked about the gunner driving out through a wall of men with the ball. You'd always imagine that there was fellas being thrown left, right and centre above in Croke Park. And then in the first Dublin, of course, the 55 final against Dublin, once again we listened to the game outside McNeil's, and Micheal O'Hare again bringing it all home in that fabulous voice. He has done so much for the GAA. He has done so much for the young people of Ireland, and in particular for the people of Kerry, because I have no doubt that he kept Kerry young fellas involved in football.
Micheal, of course, had a great gift of describing what was happening. He was very descriptive, and the day and the band leading on, and if there was a fella's stockings down around his ankle. I do remember a great hurling legend from Cork, Willie John Daly. Willie John took off his stockings one time, and Micheal O'Hare, he's running around in his bare feet, but he doesn't seem to mind. You know, and you could actually see Willie John without the stockings in Croke Park. But he had a great gift of making you feel, and you could create an image yourself listening to him of what was happening. He had that gift that, he transferred it to you as you listened to him on the radio.
The 1956 final. 2 minutes to go, 3 minutes to go. Christy Ring, the greatest of all time, and he burst through, and Art Foley, the Wexford goalkeeper, saved the shot, and Micheal O'Hare doesn't know how he saved it. He said, I don't know how he saved it. It was one of the most brilliant saves of all time. Well, I still think in my own mind, I can visualise Micheal O'Hare talking about Ring bursting through. He known to beat on Art Foley. It must be a goal. Cork must win the All-Ireland, and Foley throws himself and saves it. Brilliant, the best save ever. And I still believe in my mind that was the greatest save of all time, even though I have seen great saves since, and since television came in, and you see goals and saves of the year, and I've gone to a lot of hurling matches, I've seen goalkeepers making saves. They might have been better than Art Foley, but because Micheal O'Hare said it, and because the way he put it, and the way that he rose the crowd, I still think that Art Foley's save from Christy Ring was the greatest save that was ever made in Croke Park.
Approximately 3.5 minutes of play left. Wexford leading by 2 points to lead the score. 1 goal and 13 points for Wexford, 2 goals and 8 points for Cork. And from the puck out by Mick Cashman, the ball goes way up the field, but Willie Rackett sends it back down again. Teddy Philpott, standing all alone 50 yards from his own goal, gets the ball and sends it up into the centre of the field. That flash of the Ashes, that blocks down there by Terry Kelly. Terry Kelly up to the Christy Ring. Ring in front of the goal is going through. He steadies himself, he takes the shot. It's blocked by Art Foley, and it's cleared out by Art Foley. Oh, a great clearance there by Art Foley and by Mick Morrissey as the ball comes out to this side of the pitch. And the ball goes out on the wing to Tom Ryan and Ben Toomey going for it. Ryan trying to solo his way through. His way is blocked by Ben Toomey. He goes back for the ball. He hand passes across the centre. Out comes Dickie Rackett, 21 yards out to take a shot. He takes a shot. The shot to goal. It's a goal. It's a goal, and you've never seen such excitement in all your life. Hats, coats, everything you can think of have gone into the air. And the whole of Croke Park has gone stark staring wild as with time ticking away, Wexford lead 2-13 to 2-8.
And a reminder again of who the speakers are in this Colm Keane documentary.
And there are comments too from Kerry footballers Weeshie Fogarty and Johnny Cullity, and also Mick O'Neill, William Kennefick, Dan Griffin, John Kennedy and Donny Sheehan.
One characteristic remembered by many of them and commented upon by them was Micheal O'Hare's voice.
And he cuts to the high one, it's deflected in towards the goal marker, right across the goal, Pat Nolan gets it, and the forwards are, it's a goal! It's a goal! Tom Malotny! Exactly, 55 seconds gone, and Tom Malotny has a goal for Tipperary. Tip 1 goal. And the puck out goes about 20 yards out to Tom Malotny, a very short one. He gets it out on the side to Sean McLaughlin. McLaughlin goes in, he takes the shot, and it's another goal! It's another goal! The time, 1 minute, 20 seconds.
Micheal O'Hare's greatest characteristic was his voice. And he had a kind of a shrill kind of a voice that changed and brought you kind of it was like a musical voice bringing you up to a crescendo and bringing it to the height of the excitement as he seen it and generated it to you. He was, I suppose, it was a special gift. Many people have tried it since, and I've heard characters at different games and they're trying to take off the Micheal O'Hare voice. I suppose if you could describe Micheal O'Hare in one word, you would say the voice, because he did have a special voice.
Michael O'Hare's voice, I think, appealed to everybody. Nobody could ever see anyone. In fact, I can't ever remember anybody that has the same appeal to people. Perhaps McCormack. You know, McCormack and Michael O'Hare's voice have been compared. I know one is a singing and the other is a speaking voice, but there's something in both of them. If you hear Michael O'Hare's voice, you never forgot it. It had a terrific appeal. I suppose it was actually the amount of work he put into the thing. I mean, no doubt about it, he certainly put in a lot. He knew all the players, he knew everything, he had everything off pat. But nothing has been the same since he went. Micheal Muircehartaigh is very good, I suppose you could say he's following in his footsteps, but nobody can touch Micheal O'Hare at all. It's just like, again, as I said, McCormack, nobody can touch McCormack. There's something in that voice that appeals, there's something in it that we possibly don't understand what it is even, but it certainly appeals to some cells in our brain. It wakes them up. I suppose it's the preparation and the work that man put into what he did, you know.
Micheal O'Hare remembered, and we have many more aspects of the special relationship between radio and Gaelic games in our archives, which we will bring to you in these coming summer Sundays, which are so associated with the peak of the Gaelic game season.